Rebecca Mason walked through the mirrored hallways of her corporate headquarters in Manhattan with the posture of someone who had conquered the world. At 42, she was the owner of Mason Elite, one of the most renowned luxury fashion brands in the United States. Her fashion empire had been built with relentless determination, razor-sharp intelligence, and, as she liked to say, without any divine help. Rebecca firmly believed that success was solely the result of hard work, a philosophy she expressed without hesitation. "Meeting in 5 minutes in the main conference room," announced her assistant Sarah as she hurried past. Rebecca nodded without taking her eyes off the tablet where she was reviewing last quarter's numbers. Record profits. As she made her way to the meeting, her heels echoed against the marble floor like a declaration of power. Inside the conference room, the design team was presenting the new fall-winter collection. Rebecca observed every detail, every proposal with a critical eye. That's when she noticed Alice Henderson, one of the newly hired seamstresses, whispering something while briefly closing her eyes before presenting her sketches. "What was that?" "Just now, Alice?" Rebecca asked, an ironic smile playing on her lips. The 28-year-old woman blushed instantly. "Just a little prayer, Ms. Mason, for everything to go well." Silence filled the room. Everyone knew Rebecca's stance on religion. "A prayer?" Rebecca let out a restrained chuckle. "Do you think your talent comes from some divine intervention, or that God cares about our fall collection?" Alice held her posture, though visibly uncomfortable. "I believe gratitude and faith. Help me do my job better, Ms. Mason." Rebecca stood from her chair, slowly walking around the table. She admired Alice's skill. The young woman had a rare talent for fabrics and finishes, but this public display of religiosity deeply irritated her. "Look, Alice, I respect your right to believe whatever you want in your free time. But here, in this building, the only miracle that happens is hard work turning into profit. No divine being designed these models or manufactured these clothes." She picked up one of Alice's sketches. This is the result of human talent, nothing more." Some members of the team looked uncomfortable, while others silently nodded in agreement. Mason Elite was known not only for its impeccable clothing, but also for the ruthlessly secular corporate culture Rebecca had cultivated. "I understand, Ms. Mason," Alice replied calmly. "It wasn't my intention to cause any trouble." "Great. Because, you know, if God really existed and cared about people, there wouldn't be so much misery in the world, right? And he certainly wouldn't be worried about a fashion collection." Rebecca smiled, satisfied with her little lecture. "Now let's get back to real work." The meeting continued, but the incident remained in everyone's minds. Few knew that Rebecca's complicated relationship with religion had deep roots in her childhood. The daughter of devoutly religious parents in a small town in Missouri, she had grown up under the weight of rigid expectations and inflexible doctrines. Her father, a local church pastor, demanded perfection in the name of God, harshly punishing any deviation from what he deemed the righteous path. "God expects excellence from his children," he would say while forcing her to recite Bible verses as punishment for low grades or behaviors he disapproved of. Her mother, equally devout, reinforced the suffocating environment with constant reminders of hell and the damnation that awaited sinners. When Rebecca was just 15, her best friend, Jennifer, was diagnosed with leukemia. Night after night, Rebecca prayed fervently, pleading for her friend's healing, believing the words she had heard throughout her childhood about the power of true faith. "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, nothing will be impossible for you," the pastor would repeat during sermons as Rebecca clasped her hands together in desperate prayer. 3 months later, Jennifer passed away. At church, Rebecca's father declared, "God's plans are mysterious but always just." Those words became the breaking point for the teenager. If God existed and was as powerful as they said, why would he allow an innocent girl to suffer? If faith could move mountains, why hadn't it saved her friend? That day, Rebecca swore she would build her own destiny. At 18, she left for New York with nothing but a suitcase and the talent for design that had always been dismissed as frivolous by her parents. She worked in department stores by day and studied fashion design at night, saving every penny. When she launched her first small collection 7 years later, she sent an invitation to her parents. They never showed up, nor did they respond. That only reinforced her conviction. She depended on no one but herself. "Success is my best revenge," she would murmur to herself as she watched her brand grow year after year. Every new achievement was proof that she didn't need divine blessings or her father's approval. That's why Alice's devotion bothered her so much. It resurfaced memories she preferred to keep buried, reminders of a time when she believed in something beyond the tangible and was deeply disappointed. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca found several opportunities to make sarcastic remarks about faith and religion in Alice's presence. It wasn't deliberate cruelty, at least, that's what she told herself. It was simply her way of reinforcing the company culture. A culture built on celebrating individual merit, not clinging to ancient superstitions. On an especially hectic Friday, Rebecca urgently needed alterations on a few pieces for an important fashion show. She looked for Alice, who had proven to be the most skilled at last-minute adjustments. The young seamstress was in her small workspace in the production department when Rebecca noticed a small crucifix discreetly placed near her sewing machine. "Seriously, Alice? A lucky charm at work?" Rebecca asked, pointing at the object. "It's not a charm, Ms. Mason. It's a reminder. A reminder of what? That you need an imaginary being to do your job." Rebecca laughed. "Look at me, Alice. I built all of this on my own. No God helped me when I was sleeping only 4 hours a night to launch my first collection. No divine force lent me money when I was on the verge of bankruptcy in my second year." Alice remained silent, but the look in her eyes carried a compassion that irritated Rebecca even more. "You know what I find funny?" Rebecca continued. "How intelligent people like you cling to fairy tales. It's like believing in Santa Claus as an adult. Not everything in life can be explained by logic, Ms. Mason," Alice replied softly. "Sometimes, faith fills spaces that reason cannot reach." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Spare me the cheap philosophy, please. I need these alterations done by tomorrow morning, and I trust your talent, not your prayers, to make sure they're perfect." Turning to leave, Rebecca added, "And keep that thing put away, will you? We're a fashion company, not a church." As she walked away, Rebecca didn't see the calm expression on Alice's face, nor did she hear the soft, "I'll pray for you too, Ms. Mason," that the young woman murmured. Alice Henderson knew well the taste of adversity and the power of faith. Born into a middle-class family in Ohio, her childhood had been relatively stable until she was 12, when her father, a firefighter, suffered a severe accident during a commercial building fire. With burns covering 40% of his body and severe lung damage, doctors gave him little chance of survival. For 3 months, Alice accompanied her mother in hospital vigils. The family had never been particularly religious, but in the desperation of the situation, young Alice found solace in the hospital's small chapel. "I don't know how to pray properly," she confessed to a chaplain who found her crying alone one night. "But I need to do something." The elderly man smiled kindly. "God doesn't care about the right words, dear. He cares about a sincere heart." That simple conversation changed something fundamental in Alice. She started praying daily, not just for her father, but for all the patients, for the anguished families she saw in the hospital corridors, for the exhausted doctors. Against all odds, her father survived. The recovery was long and painful, over a year of surgeries and physical therapy, but he made it home. The doctors called it a medical miracle. Alice knew it was something more. In the years that followed, as the family struggled financially, due to medical expenses and her father's inability to return to work, Alice developed a faith that wasn't based on rigid doctrines or rituals, but on gratitude and resilience. She sewed to help with expenses, a skill she had learned from her grandmother, while studying at night. The opportunity to work at Mason Elite came when Alice was 27. The salary was significantly higher than her previous job at a small workshop, allowing her to finally help her parents get out of medical debt. When she was hired, Alice made a silent promise. She would never forget where she came from, and she would never let success change her essence. Rebecca's hostility toward her faith didn't shake her deeply. Alice recognized something familiar. In that bitterness, the same doubts she had wrestled with in the hospital chapel years ago. The difference was that Alice had found answers along her journey, while Rebecca seemed to still be battling unresolved questions. That's why, when Alice looked at her powerful boss, she didn't just see an arrogant businesswoman. She saw a wounded woman, using success as a shield against old pains she might not even fully recognize. Rebecca's life was going exactly as planned. The new collection was a massive success, sales skyrocketed, and Forbes had highlighted her as one of the most successful businesswomen of the year. Everything seemed to confirm her worldview. Hard work and talent were the only real forces in the universe. It was on a stormy May night in New York that everything began to change. Rebecca was alone in her penthouse apartment, reviewing contracts for an international expansion, when she received a call from her accountant. "Rebecca, we need to talk. Urgently." Martin's tense voice came through the line. "What is it? I'm busy right now." "It's about the offshore investments. There's a problem, a big problem." A cold chill ran down Rebecca's spine. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves fraud. Not on our part, but on the fund managers. Practically everything is gone, and there are serious legal implications." Rebecca's world collapsed that night. In the days that followed, the news only got worse. The investment manager handling a significant portion of her personal fortune had vanished with millions of dollars. Authorities were investigating all clients, including her, to determine potential complicity. Within just 2 weeks, Mason Elite's stock plummeted, investors pulled out, and business partners started canceling contracts. The empire Rebecca had built with such pride was now threatened not just by financial troubles, but by a scandal that tarnished her reputation. "It's not fair," she muttered to herself as she paced through her increasingly empty apartment, valuables being sold off to cover legal expenses. "I did everything right. I worked honestly. Why is this happening to me?" The irony didn't escape her. It almost felt like cosmic punishment for her arrogance, but Rebecca firmly rejected that idea. It was just bad luck, misfortune, the cruel randomness of the universe. Nothing more. On an especially difficult morning, Rebecca had to face a painful decision: temporarily shutting down the company's main factory. This meant laying off dozens of employees, including Alice Henderson. The seamstress took the news with surprising calm. "I'm sorry, Alice," Rebecca said, avoiding her gaze. Something about the young woman's quiet dignity made her feel strangely ashamed. "The circumstances are beyond my control." "I understand, Ms. Mason, and I want you to know that I'll keep praying for things to work out." Rebecca nearly let out a bitter laugh. "Your prayers won't pay my lawyers or recover my investments, Alice." "Maybe not in the way we expect," Alice replied with a gentle smile. "But faith carries us through the hardest times." Rebecca dismissed the words as just another religious cliché, but something about them echoed in her mind in the days that followed. 6 months later, Rebecca Mason was no longer the powerful businesswoman everyone knew. Her empire had been reduced to a small operation struggling to survive. Her penthouse had been sold, and she now lived in a modest flat in Brooklyn. The friends and admirers who once surrounded her had almost completely disappeared. One autumn afternoon, wandering aimlessly through the neighborhood streets, Rebecca spotted a small tailoring shop. Through the window, she saw a familiar face. Alice Henderson was inside, focused on her sewing. Rebecca hesitated. Her pride told her to keep walking, but something stronger pulled her toward the shop. The doorbell chimed as she entered, making Alice look up. Her face lit up with a genuine smile. "Ms. Mason, what a wonderful surprise." A lump formed in Rebecca's throat at the warmth of Alice's greeting. "Hello, Alice. I see you're well established." "Yes, I opened this little business a few months ago." Nothing compared to Mason Elite, but it's mine. Alice paused, studying her former boss's worn expression. Would you like some coffee? I have a machine in the back. Sitting on two simple chairs in the small back room, Rebecca found herself telling Alice everything that had happened. The investigations that had ultimately cleared her of any wrongdoing, but had drained nearly all her fortune. The friends who had vanished. The sleepless nights. The worst part isn't losing the money, Rebecca admitted, surprising even herself with her honesty. It's realizing that everything I built, everything I believed in, can disappear so easily. Alice listened without interrupting, her eyes filled with understanding, not pity. You know, Alice said when Rebecca finished, sometimes we have to lose something to gain something else. And what exactly have I gained? Rebecca asked, her old sarcasm flickering back. Perspective, maybe? A chance to start over? Rebecca shook her head, but there was no bitterness in the gesture. You're too optimistic, Alice. Actually, I'm hiring, Alice said suddenly. I have more orders than I can handle. I need someone with your eye for detail and fashion expertise. Rebecca stared at her, bewildered. You're offering me a job after I used to mock your faith, after I fired you when things got tough. I'm offering a partnership, actually, Alice corrected. I have the space and the clients. You have the name and the experience. We could build something new together. Rebecca felt something strange in her chest, an emotion she hadn't experienced in a long time. Gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite name. Why? She asked simply. Alice smiled. Because I believe in second chances and because maybe this isn't just a coincidence. That night in her small apartment, Rebecca couldn't stop thinking about Alice's offer. It was more than generosity. It was an act of faith. Faith in Rebecca, even when she had lost faith in herself. Weeks later, a modest sign was installed on the shop's facade. Henderson and Mason Custom Creations. The business was small, but it was growing steadily, attracting a loyal clientele that valued quality craftsmanship. One afternoon, while they were working on a wedding dress, Rebecca noticed Alice saying her usual silent prayer before starting. Can I ask what exactly you pray for? Rebecca inquired, without the sarcasm of before. Alice smiled. Gratitude, mostly, and wisdom, to see the purpose in every challenge. Rebecca remained silent for a moment. So you believe everything happens for a reason? I believe we can find meaning even in the hardest circumstances, Alice replied. Like the two of us here, building something new out of what once seemed like the end. Rebecca looked around the small shop, at Alice's skilled hands, at the new life she was creating. It was so different from before, simpler, certainly less luxurious. But there was a sense of fulfillment here that her previous success had never given her. Maybe, Rebecca said slowly, maybe I was arrogant to think I had all the answers. We all are in one way or another, Alice replied gently. That night, alone in her apartment, Rebecca did something she hadn't done since she was a child. She closed her eyes and tried to form a prayer. She wasn't sure how to do it, or if anyone was listening, but she whispered words of gratitude for the second chance, for Alice's unexpected friendship, for the opportunity to start over. There were no flashes of lightning or extraordinary revelations, just a quiet sense of peace, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. A year later, the small shop had expanded into a larger atelier. Rebecca hadn't regained her former fortune, but she had found something money had never been able to buy, a purpose that went beyond material success. One calm afternoon at the atelier, as Rebecca adjusted a dress, a client commented on the remarkable partnership between her and Alice. You two seem so different, the woman observed. How do you work so well together? Rebecca exchanged a knowing glance with Alice before replying, Let's just say we've learned that there are more paths to the truth than we once thought, and that sometimes, when we think we've lost everything, we're just being prepared for something different. As the client left, Rebecca noticed a small crucifix discreetly placed on the atelier's wall. It wasn't the same one Alice had before. This one had been purchased by Rebecca herself, a gift for the opening of their new space. It wasn't a symbol of dramatic conversion or absolute certainty. It was a reminder of humility, an acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, the universe was more complex and mysterious than her old worldview had allowed her to admit. "Do you think we're ready for that wedding dress order?" Alice asked, walking over. Rebecca smiled. "I think so. But maybe a little faith wouldn't hurt, right?" And for the first time, there was no irony in her words.